Well, I'm waiting for some additional files to download off of my GoPro, and while I'm up here messing around with stuff, I'm just still in the mood to keep on working on videos. So we got through our winter slump of last year, and as the season broke, now we're actually catching up to 2021. And we started out working on a wheel balance issue. So I show you guys how we installed wheel balancing beads inside our tires. And if the video is too short after that, we might get into some of my subfloor insulation and installation. So, well, here we go. Feeling a little rusty, see if I can get back into this. Today we are installing tire balancing beads. If you don't know what those are, what I've been told is that it's quite difficult to get balancing weights on a set of tires, or on a set of wheels, especially with like a dually. And what they tend to use are these products, which, if you'll follow me into our place, these products are these tiny little either glass or ceramic beads. This is, for example, a 10-ounce bag. And what you do is you just dump them inside the tire. If you do this while you're mounting the tire, you can just throw the bag in and the bag will sort of destroy itself. And then the beads will be free to run around. And the idea is that the beads seek the light spots in the tire as it turns, and they naturally distribute in such a way to dynamically balance the tire, which means actually not only can it just balance the tire in a normal situation, but let's say you pick up some mud or snow, they will shift their position while the car is driving and continually maintain that balance. So we're throwing them in the bus because we've got a pretty weird vibration that definitely shows up between 45 and 55 miles an hour. And anyway, I figured I'd show you how we went about the process. It's a little convoluted. First off, when you order these things, you're usually going to get a number of pouches. You're going to get some sort of an installation kit, which would probably include a sort of a squeeze bottle, a section of short rubber hose, a valve stem core removal tool, which looks like this, and also a set of new valve stems and cores, which look like these. The point being that if you just put beads in and then put your original core back in, like one of these, this is what we took out. The beads can possibly get kind of stuck in these things and hold them open, and they can lose pressure. So they just have these special filtered versions that prevent the beads. Well, you have to use the correct core when you put beads in your tire. Anyway, I'm going to show you some of the process on how we figured out how to do these as best as we can, because it is kind of finicky. The first step, I'm going to be working on the inner wheel, which its valve is straight in that way. So what you do is you take your tool and you get it into the valve stem, and then you just start unscrewing it, and you're going to start losing air. The point is that you're going to be letting the air out of the tire first. So if you're doing on the front tires, you would actually have to get a jack in order to keep the wheel from collapsing down too hard. But here, since we got dualies, I'm just letting the other full tire take the load of the vehicle while I let the air out of the inside one. I'm going to keep on unscrewing this, and eventually it's going to unthread and want to spring right out and just pop out and get really, really noisy. So here we go. Let's see if I can give a good view at this. Oop, almost there. We're just gonna let that continue to deflate, and then as soon as it's quiet, we'll do the next step. So typically, the next step, they say, is to just take your short piece of tubing, fit it over the now empty open core, and put your bottle on the other end of the tube and just tip it over and start squeezing them in. The thing is that you are guaranteed to just clog up immediately. The beads will just fill up the tube, and then they'll just kind of jam in place. So the trick that I'm going to use is sort of a two-part thing. Number one, I'm going to give myself a little bit of an extra hopper of material in the form of a firm plastic straw that's the same diameter as my tube. And we're going to fill the entire hopper up and then take a palm sander with no sandpaper on it, and we're actually going to hold the sander on the tube, and it's going to kind of vibrate the whole thing, which sort of loosens up the beads and allows them to fall more so into the tire. The next thing I should mention, when you're setting this up, you do want to make sure that your valve stem is toward the bottom of the, rotate the wheel until the valve is at the bottom, because that's where it's most naturally kind of pointed upward, and you want to have sort of like a slope to feed them in. So I'm going to set up this next section here, and we'll show you how it goes. So our tube is in on the stem. You can kind of give it a couple twists to actually catch the threads and just really make sure that it's threaded in there well. So we got our tube to our stem and our straw hopper, and we just fill it with beads. I'll see if I can get good video of this. I'm going to put the palm sander against the back of the straw, and what we're going to look for are these beads to kind of be swirling and flowing a little bit. This is going to be maybe noisy, maybe a little bit weird. Anyway, let's see if we can get this to go. Hopper's empty. Once you've been doing this for a little while, you kind of get a little static cling. But for the most part, that just emptied out that hopper. So we'll fill it up again and repeat. After your entire contents have been emptied in to the tire, we'll remove our hose and then install a new valve core. Valve core, that was the name of that dog dragon from the Never-Ending Story, right? Valve core! Oh god, that's a terrible joke. Okay, so this is a little bit of a reach. The new one is in place, and then it just gets screwed back in. Until snug. And then it's time to fill the tire back up. I've skipped a step or two in the depiction of this, but let me just catch you up to where we are at the moment. I am beginning to work on our flooring situation. The first step was to use more of this Dynamat type material, which is it comes from a brand called Noico. This is an 80 mil. It's basically a layer of butyl rubber with a foil backing, and this is the stuff that they use for sound deadening and materials. And so what I ended up doing was I'm covering the entire floor with this. It's going to be one additional layer of waterproofing on the bottom. And then on top of that, we are using 2-inch rigid foam insulation, which I've already cut into the front section here. So we had some cutouts around our fuel fill port and some fun stuff to play around with the edges here, as well as the angled front step. What you'll also notice is a base for our our passenger seat. So this is a set of 2x4s just laid flat against the floor with a section of insulation in between them. And the 2x4s were not quite as thick as the insulation, so I also have a piece of 3/4 plywood, also pre-drilled, and this fits in. So now that standing height is flush. And what this means is that we have a non-compressible platform base that we're going to bolt the passenger seat through. So we're going to have a particle board subfloor that's going to lay on top of this. And then where that passenger seat is going to go, this is the mounting plate, just like the one that we put on the driver's side captain's chair. So I'm at the point where I'm going to start putting the subfloor on, and I'm going to be able to permanently mount that mounting bracket. So I figured you should see how it came together up to this point, and then I'll probably do a little more step-by-step to show how it finishes out on the back side. And there's our chair, tools, junk, and yeah, things are coming along. In order to prevent all of our seams from stacking on top of each other, we're laying the insulation board lengthwise along the bus. And our subfloor is going to be laid widthwise, so we're going to have full sheets going kind of crossways. And what I just finished here were the cuts on the front subfloor piece, including that little angled step and our little cutouts and notch. And the next step for me is to drill out the mounting holes for, like the through holes for the bolts that mount our passenger seat plate. So that's what we got. That's where it's going. Now we just got to do it. One tip when drilling through any kind of laminate wood or particle board such as this, and especially with something like a wood bit, when you drill, you end up applying a lot of pressure, and it's fine when you're drilling through the first face of your board. You'll notice that you get a very, very clean line. But if you just drill the entire way through and keep on pushing, eventually what you end up doing is you split the bottom layer out, and it just kind of breaks and gets sort of ugly. Now in this case, I'm actually working from the bottom side of my board. So if I were to drill through here, I would have these like splinters, like once I flipped it back over, these splinters would kind of stick up, and it would just You know, it's not so important because this isn't a finished piece, it's going to get covered, but it's still good practice. What I recommend in this kind of situation is that you drill down until the point of the drill bit just barely breaks through, but before you get all the way through. And as soon as that point breaks through, that gives you an alignment mark. So you drill halfway through from one side, and flip the board over, and then you'll find your little 4 pinholes, and then you finish drilling back in the other way. So that last little breakage point happens hidden in the middle of the board, and you get a clean cut from the top and the bottom. Yeah. After some heaving and twerking and, wait, is twerking the word? Tweaking. There goes our first piece. And all of our cuts lined up nicely. All of our angles look good. Mounting holes are where I want them to be. And our front edge is nice and aligned. That's a thick floor. By sheer dumb luck, my bus is, or at least my flooring was 6.5 inches wider than the span of the bus. So when I started cutting my board, I ripped this 6.5 inch piece off of this side. You'll notice this was designed to be subflooring, so it's actually a tongue and groove which slots in. And that was going to be a very, very complicated and painful process when cutting around this guy. We would have had to either make our notch wide enough to allow for sliding to go in, and then we would have a gap right here, or we would have to lift this piece up, fit them together, and then drop them 2 pieces as one unit. It takes about all my strength just to lift one of these. And as it turns out, I'm not going to do that because this piece that I ripped is the exact same width as that offset. So I'm just going to cut a separate piece off of this guy and just plunk him in, and then I'm just going to have a little L cut for the second large piece, and I can just drop the panel down and slide it straight in, and Bob's your uncle. So that's what I'm going to do. It's going to have a little bit of a seam, but better than an impossible fitment. This is the underside of our second piece of floor. This was the cutout that I needed to make for the fuel fill door compartment. You'll see that I did an angled cut for this point here, so that when it's face up, this is going to line up cleanly against the surface. But yeah, so I just took off like about 1/8 of an inch or so at a shallow angle to make room for the body of the fill compartment. So we'll see how easy it'll be to actually get that guy to fit in there. Second piece is in, and I had a little more wiggle room than I thought I had, so this ended up just being a gap, but I'm going to be filling in around the perimeter with expanding foam, so that's going to work. I said I'd do it, and I freaking did it. So this is what it looks like from the underneath. I have some L-bracket, fender washers, split ring lock washers and nylocks. Those were what hold on the underside. There's the front, there's the rear. Here's our second battery that I've recently replaced. And we got that seat locked in. So when we scavenged these seats, we also took the seatbelt mechanisms. The actual recoil system is attached to the chair itself, but we took the upper mount, and this was where the seatbelt mounting track was in the original version of the bus. So all we had to do was just save some nuts and bolts, and these were already pre-threaded. So seatbelt mounts here, and it attaches, so we can seatbelt ourselves this way, and when it's time to have more of a social situation, we can disconnect that seatbelt and hit the release, and then this chair can swivel pretty much 360 degrees. So we're eventually going to have a dinette mode, then we're going to have table, chair, bench, and then we're going to have passenger mode. I still need to grease it, oil it a little bit, but there we go. We are functional, and now we can safely drive with pilot and co-pilot.
It's a beautiful morning, and I'm heading somewhere beautiful. Packed everything I need.